Your adult child is not talking to you. Maybe it even feels like they have cut you off. That is what we're talking about tonight. I'm Jonathan. I'm a family therapist. I'm an addictions counselor. I am the host of this group. We are talking about when your adult child doesn't want to talk to you. Maybe it even feels like they have shut you out. And I know that this is a very, very sensitive conversation, and I don't want anybody to feel blamed, right? Because that's not what I'm trying to do. But I am going to talk real about how to understand what is going on and what to do about it when your adult child won't talk to you. So tonight, I want to start with a question, right? I don't want you to think about your adult child. Not yet. Instead, I want you to think about somebody else in your life that you don't really enjoy talking to. It could be a coworker, it could be a relative, it could be a neighbor, an old friend. Just think of someone like if you saw their name pop up on your phone, you'd probably hesitate before answering, or you wouldn't even answer. Now ask yourself, why? Maybe it's because you don't trust them. Maybe you know they're going to criticize you. Maybe you know they're not really interested in understanding you, they just want to talk your ear off. Or they constantly interrupt you. Maybe they've already decided what you should do before you even finish explaining yourself, and they do that over and over. You know, every conversation might turn into advice or correction or a lecture. And maybe you just walk away every time you talk to that person and you feel worse than you did before you started talking with them, right? It might feel like they aren't talking with you, they're talking at you because they want something, right? They want to convince you. They want to change your mind. They want you to get you to do something. If you've ever had someone like that in your life, you probably don't look forward to talking to them, right? You avoid them when you can. Here's the question. If those things would make you avoid talking to someone, why would you expect your adult child to respond differently if they felt the same way? Now, before anybody hears blame in what I'm saying, let me tell you, that's not where I'm going. I am talking about human nature. Right? Human beings naturally move towards relationships that feel emotionally safe, and they naturally pull away from relationships that constantly leave them feeling criticized, judged, manipulated, or misunderstood. But here's where this gets complicated. Some parents have done a wonderful job at creating that kind of safety, right? And their adult child still doesn't want to talk to them. Why? Because sometimes they're not avoiding you, they're avoiding what they don't want to face. That's another part of human nature, avoidance of discomfort. They might uh, they might not want to admit that they're scared, right? That they're ashamed, that they're depressed, that they're using marijuana every day, that they don't know what to do, that they're gaming all night, that they don't believe in themselves anymore. They may feel like everyone else their age is moving forward while they are standing still, right? Sometimes silence is less about avoiding a parent and more about avoiding painful emotions. Sometimes it's easier to blame a parent than to face their own painful emotions. So, when you take those two things that I just talked about, when those two things come together, right? They are avoiding talking to someone they don't feel safe talking to, and they're avoiding their own shame. That's where I see families get really stuck in a painful cycle. So here's what I see happen. The adult child is overwhelmed, they're ashamed, they're anxious, they're avoiding taking responsibility, and the parent becomes understandably worried and begins to ask more questions, right? They're giving more advice. They're trying harder to motivate them, point out problems, but they're trying to help. And the more pressure that child feels, the more they withdraw, right? The more they withdraw, the harder the parent pushes. I don't see where either one is really trying to hurt each other in that moment. They're responding to the pain and the worry they're experiencing. But together, they create that cycle, right? And it leaves everyone feeling frustrated, disconnected, exhausted, even ashamed. So, how do we begin changing that cycle? This is where I probably should have told everyone to take some notes, right? I feel like I'm giving more of some points here today. I'm going to give you 4 important points that I thought about before we start talking here. Point number 1: get clear on your own lane. And what I mean by that is one of the biggest mistakes that parents make is taking responsibilities for things that don't actually belong to them. So instead of asking, how do I get my adult child to make better choices? You start asking, you start thinking, what am I actually responsible for here? Right? Like, you are responsible for your money, your home, your time, your boundaries, your behaviors, the way you communicate, right? That's all yours. The promises you make, the consequences that you choose, right? Those are your boundaries. You are not responsible for making another adult become responsible. So, for example, you don't go around, I hope you don't go around telling other adults what they have to do with their finances. Unless maybe you're a financial advisor, but in that case, they're asking you, right? They're paying you for that advice, right? So maybe an if adult came to you and said, "Hey, what should I do with this money?" or what, right? You might give them that advice, but you're not going around just telling people what they should do. So flip that around. You wouldn't take kindly to another adult telling you what to do with your money, with your finances. So with your adult child, that kind of conversation sounds differently, right? It sounds differently when you're staying in your lane, when you're being clear about what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. So with finances, it's going to be more like, here's what I'm willing to pay for. Here's what I'm no longer willing to pay for. Here's what I'm willing to help with. And here's what I'm not willing to take responsibility for anymore. Those are your decisions. That's your side of the boundary. Notice you focus on the things you actually control. Point number 2: stay out of your child's lane. Right? So know your lane and stay out of their lane. That does not mean that you stop caring. That doesn't mean you become cold. That doesn't mean you cut them off emotionally. It means you recognize that one of the hardest parts of becoming an adult is learning how to solve your own problems. When your child was 9 years old, your job was often to solve problems for them. And as they became adults, your job changes. Your job becomes supporting them while they learn to solve problems for themselves. That means there will, let me say that again, that means there will be times when they choose a path you wouldn't choose. I didn't say maybe, I said it will happen. They will choose a path that you would not choose for them. There will be times when you're almost certain that they're making a mistake, right? You'll be cringing on the inside. You'll want to jump in. Everything is like, you've got to fix this. You got to tell them exactly what they should do here. But if their decision isn't violating one of your adult boundaries, sometimes the most loving thing that you can do for them is allow them to learn. And learning doesn't only happen with success. Some of the greatest moments of learning come through struggle. If we constantly step in and prevent every disappointment, every failure, every uncomfortable consequence, we may also be preventing the very growth we've been hoping for. And the more that happens over time, not only are they avoiding growth and learning, but resentment starts to build, right? Tension builds because you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing. They're not doing things they should be doing. And resentment builds, conflict builds. And over time, that gets to a point where the tension is so much we just can't even talk about it anymore, right? Which brings me to the third point: stay connected while they learn, right? Like I said before, this isn't about cutting them off, right? But I do think this is the hardest part, right? A lot of times I find parents feel like they have two choices. Either I rescue them, either, even by forcing or controlling, right? But I rescue them, I make it happen, or I cut them off. I absolutely do not believe those are the only choices. You can stay connected. You can encourage them. You can remind them that you love them. You can listen. You can ask questions. You can let them know you're available if they would like your opinion. But you don't have to force your advice on them. You can be there with them and also let them learn through the process. You don't need to convince them every time you talk. And you also don't have to win every disagreement. There are so many times where you just need to be in that position as a parent where you step back and say, okay, it's your choice, it's your thing. And not with cynicism, but with belief, right? Oh man, if I could just find a way to make this point, because I think it would help so many parents, right? Those moments aren't where you step back and like, all right, have it your way. I know this is going to screw up, or, it's not like that, right? It's like, hey, this is your life, right? You need to make a choice here, and I want it to work out. Maybe you see a way that I don't see, right? I'm going to give you that credit. I'm going to give you that hope. I'm here for you. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, I'm also here for you. I am here no matter what. I care about you, right? It's someone who has boundaries, but also has an open door. It's someone who doesn't rescue, but they also don't reject. Okay, that brings me to the fourth point: resetting your relationship. So, what do you do if you're listening to all this tonight and you're thinking, that's us, right? We've been stuck in this cycle for a long time. My child barely talks to me anymore. Every conversation turns into an argument where they just shut down. They have shut me out. Well, I don't want you to keep trying harder with the same approach, right? If you're in that situation, it's time to have a different conversation, right? It's a reset. It's a conversation about rebuilding the relationship. So it's not a conversation about getting a job. It's not a conversation about college. It's not a conversation about marijuana, video games, chores, responsibilities, or whatever they're doing wrong. It's a conversation about your relationship. So it might sound something like this: hey, I've been thinking about us a lot lately, and I don't like where our relationship has gotten. I feel like somewhere along the way, we've got caught in this cycle where I keep trying to help you and you keep feeling like you need to pull away. So I want you to know something. I love you. That hasn't changed and that's not going to change. But I also realize something. You are an adult now, and there are decisions that belong to you. I cannot live your life for you. It's your turn to take control of your life. See, this is where it's important for parents to own their own part in this. And I'm serious in this, right? I don't believe either side is completely innocent or hasn't done something ineffective or wrong in this situation, right? This is a time to own your part. So it's not because everything's your fault. It's because your part is the only thing that you can change, right? As a parent, that's all you have, right? And when you focus on your part and you claim your part and you own that part, it can be a very powerful moment. So you say to them, you know, I think sometimes I've crossed the line. I've been supporting you and trying to control your life. My intentions were good, but now I can see how that may not have felt that way to you, right? And then you can explain what you're going to do differently, right? You can say, I'm working on getting really clear about what I'm responsible for in my life, right? And what I'm not responsible for in your life anymore. These are some of the boundaries, right? And then you explain to them, right? Your finances, your home, the things you're willing to do and not do, right? You tell them that you need to work on being consistent with those. And I'm serious, right? They need to hear where those boundaries are. These are my things, my responsibilities. I want to be consistent with owning those. But I also want to respect that there are decisions that belong to you, even when I don't agree with them, even when I'm worried, even when I think you're making a mistake, right? I need to respect that those are your decisions. And then is, I think, one of the most powerful sentences that you can say, statements that you can say in a moment like that. You say, I'm going to do my best to support you instead of trying to control you. Why is that so important? Right? That means so much to a young adult, right? I'm being trusted. I'm being supported. I'm not being controlled. I'm being believed in. Now, that can also put a panic into a young adult, like, oh, I don't know how to do this without someone telling me what to do, or, I've never been responsible. No one's ever actually made me be responsible for these things and held me to it. That can create a panic in them, but it's also an open door for them to learn and to grow, right? So it's not about control, it's about support. But let's be clear, support does not mean rescuing. Support does not mean agreeing with everything. Support does not mean removing certain consequences. And support, really, support means that they have to learn how to build their own life, right? And you believing in them while they do that process, right? You believe in their ability to take over their life, to take control of their life, and you're going to support them and trust them along the way. Once you have that conversation, leave the door open. Right? And that's where you can say something like, if you ever want my opinion, my help, or just someone to listen, I hope you'll come to me. I can't promise I'll always agree, but I can promise I'll work hard to listen before I speak. Right? And it's okay to say that. You're two different people. You're not going to agree on everything. Your kid knows that. You know that. Right? That's not the problem. It's about how you relate to each other, how you listen. And listening before you speak is a great way to build connection and rebuild that relationship. So I want to say something about this. I'll probably say it twice. Don't expect that one conversation to magically fix everything. That's not how it works. If you've been stuck in this pattern for years, 2 years, 5 years, however many years, trust usually isn't rebuilt in one evening, right? I just don't see that. Even in the most amazing conversations, it takes time. Why? Because when trust is rebuilt, it's because your words are matching your action over time. It's kind of like a formula, right? So what you're saying matches what you're doing consistently. And the same for them, right? That's a big part of trust. And your child needs to experience that, right? That you're really becoming someone with clear boundaries and also someone who is continually emotionally safe to talk to, right? That's when relationships really start to change, right? Not because you're controlling them better, but because you're relating to them differently, right? And you're probably, I encourage parents to have support. That's why I want you to be a part of this group, right? That's why I want you to get on my email list. That's why I want you to come to one of the trainings that we do. You need that support. You need that guidance. You need that help because this is not easy on your side as well. And sometimes, not sometimes, we all have these moments where we need a little bit of a wake up call, right? We need someone to say, hey, You need to look at it this way. Those are important. All right. So I'm going to close with this. Don't compare where your child is today with where they need to be in the future. I've said that so many times. It's like a mantra to a lot of the parents that I work with. They've heard me say that before. Don't compare where your child is today with where they need to be in the future. Parents often get trapped in that space, right? It's that space between where their adult child is today and where they desperately want them to be. And in that space, right, in that middle is where arguments happen. That's where lectures happen, power struggles, constant attempts to get your child to change. Right? Your job isn't to stand in the middle trying to force them to the finish line. You don't want to be in that place. Your job is to be clear about your own boundaries. And that allows your adult child to take ownership of their own journey. And then you can stay connected in a way that keeps the relationship alive. Again, will that cause or create change instantly? No, it won't. There are no guarantees. But I can tell you this, I've seen families stay stuck for years because the parents kept trying to do a job that only their adult child could do. Right? And it's not blaming all the parents, right? I've seen many adult children who are manipulating, they're taking advantage of it, they're right, it's just a messed up thing. We need to see clearly what the roles are, right? And I've seen relationships go from really, really stuck to slowly beginning to heal when parents became clear on what was their lane and the adult children became clear on what was their lane, and they stayed connected through the process. So it doesn't make the journey easy, but it gives the relationship room to breathe. And sometimes that's exactly what is needed for real lasting change to begin.